The sun dipped low over the quiet rural village, painting the dusty road in shades of gold and crimson. Birds circled overhead, but their songs could not mask the tension gathering in the air. At the far end of the road, a red pickup truck pulled up, its tires crunching against gravel. David stepped out. His boots hit the ground with force, and in his hand, he carried a worn leather file, stuffed with papers so old their edges had turned yellow. His jaw was set, his shoulders tense. This was his grandfather's road, and today they were trying to take it away from him. Down the lane, the rumble of machines grew louder. A bulldozer and construction trucks rolled forward, flanked by workers in neon vests. Leading them was a sleek black car. From it stepped Mrs. Clark, the HOA president, dressed immaculately in a white suit, her sunglasses gleaming in the fading light. Two board members followed close behind, one carrying a clipboard stacked with official-looking documents. She didn't look at the villagers gathering along the road. She didn't look at the children clinging to their mothers or the old men leaning on canes. Her eyes were fixed only on David. "Move your truck, Mr. David," she said coolly. "The construction begins today." David's grip on the file tightened. He planted himself in the middle of the road, his voice rising like thunder. "This road belongs to my family. My grandfather bought it in 1954, and I have the deed right here. No one, no association, no lawyer, no paper can take it from us." The villagers murmured, torn between fear and loyalty. Some nodded at David's words. Others shook their heads nervously, unwilling to challenge the powerful HOA. Mrs. Clark removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes sharp as glass. "Your documents are meaningless now. Laws have changed. The HOA controls this community, and the road is part of it. You can wave your old papers around all you want, but progress doesn't wait for the past." She turned to the workers. "Start the engines." The bulldozer roared to life, its growl shaking the air. Dust rose, swirling around like smoke from fire. David stood his ground, raising the file above his head for everyone to see. "Look at these papers. This is the truth. If they take this road today, tomorrow they'll take your homes, your farms, everything." The villagers gasped. His words cut deep. Suddenly, sirens pierced the air. A police car pulled up, lights flashing blue and red against the twilight sky. A uniformed officer stepped out, his hand raised for silence. "What's going on here?" the officer demanded. David turned to him, his voice filled with desperation. "Officer, they're trying to steal my family's road. I have proof, real proof, that this land belongs to us. They can't just bulldoze it." Mrs. Clark's lips curled into a thin smile. "Officer, the HOA has already approved the project. We're well within our rights. Mr. David is simply refusing to accept reality." The officer glanced between them, his brow furrowed. The bulldozer engine idled menacingly, as if waiting for a signal. The villagers held their breath. Finally, the officer raised his voice. "Enough. Nobody moves a single rock until I see the documents myself. Tomorrow morning, both parties will bring their legal papers to the courthouse. Until then, no construction, no bulldozing. Do I make myself clear?" David lowered the file, slightly, breathing hard. Mrs. Clark adjusted her jacket, her expression unreadable. The workers shut down the bulldozer, the growl fading into silence. The sun had almost vanished now, leaving the road bathed in shadows. The villagers slowly dispersed, whispering among themselves. Some patted David on the back. Others walked away, uncertain of whose side to take. David turned to the officer, his voice trembling but firm. "Tomorrow, I'll prove this road is mine. Everyone will see the truth." The officer nodded once. "We'll see, Mr. David. We'll see." As darkness fell over the village, David stood alone in the middle of the road, clutching the old leather file like a shield. The machines loomed behind him, silent but threatening. Mrs. Clark's car pulled away, her taillights glowing red like burning eyes. The battle for the road had only just begun. The village slept uneasily that night. For decades, life had been calm along the narrow road that connected every home, but now it felt like a battlefield. David barely closed his eyes. He sat at his kitchen table, the old leather file spread before him. The papers were fragile, yellowed with age, but to him, they were stronger than steel. His grandfather's signature stared back at him from the deed, a reminder of everything that had been fought for. Outside, headlights flashed as villagers passed by his house, whispering about tomorrow. Some voices were filled with hope, others with doubt. David heard one man mutter, "Maybe Clark is right. Maybe it's time for progress." David slammed the table with his fist. Progress? Progress doesn't mean stealing what belongs to us. By morning, the road was alive again. The bulldozer and trucks still waited, lined up like soldiers ready for war. Villagers gathered in clusters, murmuring, debating, choosing sides. David arrived in his red pickup, stepping out with the leather file clutched tightly in his hand. His face was pale from lack of sleep, but his eyes burned with resolve. Mrs. Clark stood, already at the center, surrounded by her HOA members. She wore the same calm expression, her white suit spotless, her lips curved in a faint smile. In her hand, she held a folder of fresh documents, sharp, clean, modern, as if mocking David's worn paper. "You should save yourself the embarrassment," she said, her voice smooth but sharp. "Those old deeds won't stand in court. The HOA has lawyers, judges, and the law itself on our side." David's voice boomed across the road. "The law was written with blood, sweat, and sacrifice. My grandfather worked this land when no one else cared about it. And now you want to erase that history with a signature? Not while I'm alive." The villagers stirred. Some clapped softly. Others shook their heads nervously. Mrs. Clark glanced at them, then smirked. "Listen to yourselves. You cheer for a man holding scraps of paper while we bring progress. New pavement, lights, safety. Are you really going to side with the past over the future?" At that moment, the police officer arrived again, parking his car in the middle of the road. He stepped out, raising his hand for silence. "I made myself clear yesterday. No fighting, no bulldozing. Today is about order. Both of you, David and Mrs. Clark, will bring your documents to the courthouse tomorrow morning. Until then, this road remains untouched." David stepped forward, holding his papers high. "Then let everyone see. Let the whole village witness the truth. Tomorrow, in front of the judge, I'll prove once and for all this road belongs to us." Mrs. Clark crossed her arms, her confidence unshaken. "And tomorrow, when your papers are laughed out of court, the world will finally see who really holds power." Her words stung like poison. But David didn't flinch. He turned to the villagers, his voice trembling with both rage and hope. "If they can take this road today, tomorrow they will take your homes, your farms, your freedom. Stand with me. Don't let them bury us under their lies." The crowd grew restless. Some shouted, "We're with you, David." Others remained silent, afraid of HOA retaliation. The divide grew deeper, and the road itself felt like a crack splitting the village in two. The officer spoke firmly. "Enough. Both of you prepare your cases. Tomorrow morning at the courthouse, this will be settled legally. Until then, I don't want a single machine moving, or anyone will answer to me." He looked at the workers, who quickly powered down the bulldozer and packed their tools. The machine's growl faded, leaving behind a tense silence. Mrs. Clark adjusted her sunglasses, giving David one last look. "See you in court, Mr. David." She turned, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement as she climbed into her car. Her assistants followed, carrying their polished folders. The black car rolled away, leaving a trail of dust behind. David stood in the middle of the road, clutching his file like a lifeline. His voice echoed through the village. "This road is mine, and tomorrow I'll prove it." The villagers looked on, some cheering, some whispering in fear. The stage was set. Tomorrow, truth or lies would decide the fate of the road. The next morning, the courthouse steps were overflowing with people. Villagers, reporters, and curious onlookers crowded together, whispering about the case that had divided their community. For years, the road had been nothing more than cracked pavement and dust, but now it had become the center of a storm. David pulled up in his red pickup truck, climbing out with the old leather file clutched to his chest. He wore the same rugged clothes, but his posture was unshakable. His face carried lines of exhaustion, yet in his eyes burned something deeper than fatigue, defiance. From the opposite side, Mrs. Clark arrived in her black car. She stepped out gracefully, her white suit shining in the morning light. Her lawyer walked beside her, briefcase in hand, while two HOA members carried binders stuffed with legal papers. She didn't glance at the villagers. Her confidence made it seem like the outcome was already written. The villagers split into two camps on the steps, some cheering David, others whispering that Mrs. Clark had the law on her side. The tension was so thick it felt like even the air was holding its breath. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with chatter until the judge entered, striking the gavel. Order in the court. We will hear the case regarding the disputed ownership of the Central Village Road. Mr. David, you may present your evidence first. David rose to his feet, his hands shaking slightly as he opened the leather file. He pulled out a yellow deed, its ink faded but still legible. He stepped forward and placed it on the judge's bench. Your Honor, this document proves that my grandfather purchased this road in 1954. It has been in my family ever since. For decades, we have maintained it, used it, and lived by it. This road is not just concrete. It is our heritage. He looked back at the villagers, his voice trembling with emotion. If the HOA can erase history with a single vote, then none of us are safe. Today it's my road. Tomorrow, it could be your homes. Some villagers in the back shouted, "He's right." The judge struck the gavel again. Silence in the court. Mrs. Clark's lawyer stood. His suit was sharp, his tone calm but cutting. Your Honor, while Mr. David's sentiment is admirable, the law does not run on nostalgia. The deed he holds may once have been valid, but laws have changed. In 1989, a zoning act reclassified all residential connector roads as community property, falling under HOA management when an association is established. His papers are outdated, nothing more than relics. Mrs. Clark leaned forward slightly, her voice low but clear. We represent the future, not the past. The HOA has a duty to provide safety, development, and modernization. This road belongs to everyone, not just to the memories of one man's family. The villagers erupted again, some clapping, others booing. The divide was now a chasm. The judge's gavel slammed down. One more outburst, and I will clear the courtroom. David's face flushed with anger. He turned sharply toward Mrs. Clark. You talk about the future, but what you mean is power. You don't want safety, you want control. You hide behind new laws because you can't erase the truth of the old ones. Mrs. Clark gave a thin smile. And you, David, hide behind your grandfather's ghost because you're afraid of change. The words struck David like a blade. His hand trembled as he clutched the file tighter, but he didn't back down. He faced the judge again. Your Honor, all I ask is fairness. Let the truth be weighed, not buried under technicalities. The judge adjusted his glasses, his face unreadable. This court will take the evidence under review. Both the old deed and the HOA's documents will be examined thoroughly. Until then, no decision will be declared. He struck the gavel. This session is adjourned until further notice. The courtroom exploded into noise as villagers argued among themselves. Some rushed to David, clapping him on the back, praising his courage. Others flocked to Mrs. Clark, confident that the HOA's lawyers would crush him in the end. As the crowd spilled onto the courthouse steps, David stood alone near his pickup. He opened the file and stared at his grandfather's signature. His hand shook, but his jaw hardened. They won't bury us. Not while I still breathe. From across the steps, Mrs. Clark slipped on her sunglasses, giving him one final look before entering her car. Her smirk said everything. You're already losing. The road's fate remained undecided, but the war had only just begun. The second day of the hearing drew an even larger crowd. News had spread beyond the village. Reporters with cameras lined the courthouse steps, eager to capture the feud that had transformed a simple road into a battlefield of legacy versus law. David arrived early, his red pickup rumbling to a stop at the curb. He clutched the leather file tightly, his knuckles white. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes, Sleep had abandoned him once again. But when he stepped out, villagers who still believed in him cheered. "David, don't give up. This road belongs to you." Their voices fueled his resolve. He raised a file like a torch. "I will not give up." Moments later, Mrs. Clark appeared. Her black car slid to the curb, polished and flawless. She emerged with her lawyer and HOA board members, each carrying neatly organized folders. Her presence drew its own applause. Half the crowd now supported her vision of progress. "Clark will bring us safety. She's the future." The divide had become an open wound. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The judge called the session to order. "Today, we will examine the legitimacy of both claims. Each side will present not only documents, but also supporting arguments. The truth will be uncovered." Mrs. Clark's lawyer stood first. He spoke with crisp precision, waving fresh papers. "Your Honor, the 1989 Zoning Act is explicit. Roads connecting multiple residences are automatically designated community property. The HOA was created legally with the consent of the majority. Therefore, the HOA owns the road. End of argument." The lawyer placed the statute book before the judge, the bold text underlined, "Mrs." Clark then rose, her voice calm, persuasive. "Progress cannot wait for memories. We will build sidewalks, add streetlights, and pave this road so our children are safe." Can Mr. David promise that? No. He clings to the past while ignoring the needs of the present. Her words stirred half the crowd into cheers. David stood slowly. His hand trembled, but his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "My grandfather bought this road when it was nothing but dirt and stones. He laid it brick by brick. For decades, my family has cared for it, patched its cracks, cleared its snow. You speak of safety and progress, but what you offer is control. You want ownership, not protection." He lifted the old deed high for all to see. "This is proof, written, signed, sealed. You can pass new laws, but you cannot erase history." The villagers erupted. Some shouted in agreement. Others booed him, siding with Mrs. Clark. The judge slammed the gavel furiously. "Order! This is not a marketplace." The officer from the village, seated near the front, rose and barked. "Everyone sit down, or I'll clear the courtroom." The noise settled reluctantly. The judge leaned forward, his voice heavy with authority. "Mr. David, history is valuable, but the law must prevail. Tell this court, why should we honor a deed from 1954 when the law has clearly shifted ownership since?" David's throat tightened. For a moment, silence weighed on him. Then he spoke with raw emotion. "Because if you strip away history, you strip away justice. If we allow the HOA to claim what families built with their sweat, what stops them from taking everything else? Land, homes, farms. Will we all just hand it over because a law was rewritten?" The villagers murmured, torn in half once more. Mrs. Clark tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Dramatic words, Mr. David. But emotion doesn't change facts. The law does." Her lawyer added sharply, "Your Honor, this man is blinded by sentiment. He cannot see the bigger picture. The road is not his. It belongs to the community." David turned to the villagers, his voice thunderous now. "If this road belongs to the community, then let the community decide. Not a boardroom, not a signature, not a committee sitting in suits. Let the people vote. Ask them who they trust more, their history or your promises." Gasps filled the room. Some villagers shouted, "Yes, let's vote." Others muttered angrily, shaking their heads. The judge struck his gavel again, but his stern face betrayed unease. The case was no longer just law versus deed. It had become a fight for the soul of the village. As the session ended for the day, the crowd spilled out of the courthouse in chaos. Shouts echoed down the street. Families argued with neighbors. Friends turned into opponents. David stood on the steps, holding the leather file against his chest. His eyes were glassy, but his voice was firm. "This isn't just about me. It's about all of us. And tomorrow, the truth will decide." Across the street, Mrs. Clark slipped on her sunglasses, her smile cold. She leaned toward her lawyer and whispered, just loud enough for David to hear, "Tomorrow, we bury him. The third day dawned heavy with storm clouds. The courthouse stood against the gray sky like a fortress preparing for war. Crowds flooded the steps once again, their voices louder than ever, half chanting for David, half cheering for Mrs. Clark. Reporters' microphones waved through the chaos. Cameras flashed, and the air was thick with anticipation. David's pickup pulled up first. He climbed out slowly, clutching the weathered leather file that had carried his family's legacy for nearly a century. His boots scraped against the stone steps, each sound echoing like a drumbeat of defiance. From the opposite curb, Mrs. Clark's black car rolled to a stop. She stepped out with elegance, her white suit as crisp as yesterday, her sunglasses hiding her eyes. At her side, her lawyer carried a gleaming binder of documents, neatly tabbed and labeled. Together, they strode toward the courthouse as if victory were already theirs. The villagers watched, divided to the core. Friends refused to make eye contact, neighbors muttered curses at each other, and families whispered nervously. Inside, the courtroom was filled to bursting. The judge entered, his gavel striking thunder across the hall. Order in the court. Today, the final decision will be delivered. Both sides have spoken. Both histories and laws have been weighed. Now, the truth must rise. The tension was unbearable. Even the walls seemed to lean in closer, straining to hear. Mrs. Clark's lawyer rose first, his voice sharp as glass. Your Honor, the HOA's claim is supported by modern law, zoning acts, and community rights. Mr. David's deed, though old, is irrelevant in the face of progress. To rule otherwise is to deny the law itself. Half the villagers applauded, their cheers echoing against the wooden walls. David rose slowly. His voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with every word. Your Honor and my neighbors, I stand here not just for myself, but for every family who built something with their own hands. My grandfather bought this road. He worked it, cared for it, loved it. And I inherited not just a deed, but a duty. He held the faded papers high. You say the law has changed. Maybe it has. But if laws can erase history, then what are we but shadows waiting to be rewritten? If we allow this, then no deed, no memory, no legacy will ever be safe. His voice broke for a moment, but then he turned to face the villagers directly. You want progress? Then let us build it together. But don't take what's not yours. Don't bury our history for the sake of power. The courtroom erupted again. Shouts, applause, arguments. The judge slammed his gavel furiously. Order. This is your final warning. David's chest rose and fell, his eyes blazing. He whispered almost to himself, yet loud enough for all to hear. This road is mine. The judge sat back, steepling his fingers, silence washing over the room. After a long pause, he spoke. This court has reviewed both arguments carefully. The HOA has the law on its side, but the law must also honor justice. Mr. David's deed is old, but it is valid. History cannot be erased simply because new rules were written. Therefore, the room froze. Every breath hung, suspended. This court rules in favor of David. Gasps tore through the courtroom. Some villagers cheered wildly, rushing toward David, clapping his back, tears streaming down their faces. Others shouted in outrage, demanding fairness for the HOA. Mrs. Clark's face tightened, her smile finally cracking. She leaned toward her lawyer, her voice a sharp whisper. This isn't over. David closed his eyes, clutching the deed against his chest. His shoulders shook, but it wasn't weakness, it was release. He had carried his grandfather's fight, and at last the legacy was safe. The judge slammed his gavel once more. This session is concluded. As the villagers poured out of the courthouse, the storm finally broke outside. Rain fell in heavy sheets, drenching the divided crowd. Some danced in celebration, others cursed in frustration, but the road, that strip of cracked pavement and history, remained unchanged. David walked down the steps, rain soaking through his shirt. He looked at the sky and whispered, "Grandfather, we did it." Behind him, Mrs. Clark stood beneath her umbrella, her eyes burning with silent promise. Though the battle was lost, the war for control of the village had only begun. The road belonged to David for now.